it's actually been quite a while since I'm extremely happy with the booster result. And this is not because of the fact that I was able to clear off my extras for my own slot, but purely because of the fact that the roster is so good. Even for Dark State, which usually is considered to be the nation that got heavily bullied by Bushiroad when it comes to the effects and card design in general, everything in this booster was almost perfect. But does the support actually affected the meta? That is exactly the question we're gonna be answered today. So for those who are new to this tier list video, welcome. I'm gonna be laying down a few ground rules just to keep things simple and fair, and for you guys to roughly understand how I'm gauging these entries. For one, I'm not judging these entries based on how meta they are, but rather how usable they are as a deck. So if you guys see a lot of entry in certain tier, that means that there are a lot of decks that are actually playable. It's just not, meta competitive, or not a lot of people actually using it. Secondly, related to the first one, is that I'm gonna be putting up to 13 entries in the top 2 tiers, 3 in the S tier and 10 in the A+ tier. This is essentially to separate a good deck from a great deck. So when I say great deck, I mean the deck that are seen playing in competitive scene. And last but not least is no collab decks. Collab nation decks in particular, purely because of the fact that I am not comfortable judging the whole nation based on just a few decks that actually make a splash. But yeah, if you guys enjoy this kind of content, consider clap the subscribe button as it will help me tremendously. And without further ado, let's start off with the orientation of the new decks. First up, we have the only non-collab new right lines that came from this booster, and that is Obina Grugio. And Obina Grugio for me is an easily A+ tier. Yes, I know I'm starting strong here, but there's a good reason for it. And to me, Obina Grugio is like you put the Can Trash Dragon deck in between a Dark State decks. And that essentially is what Obina Grugio is. It is strong enough to actually fight against decks like Chronojet, but I do feel that it does have some quirkiness that Dark State actually has as a nation of combo decks. The decks had ability to completely shut down opponent defensive, both shields and triggers, and the deck has a really strong regard and a good amount of resource that actually makes the deck not as resource heavy compared to the other decks in the Dark States. The only problem I will have to point out with this particular deck is the way you play your ratio, as it will heavily play it into how crucial your game will be, and the Vanguard's attack of this deck is on the weaker side, so you do actually have to pull triggers to actually make it threatening on the second attack. But overall, very solid deck. Moving on to the new collab right lines, we have Goto Bun. I already talked about this group of right lines before in another video, so do check that video out if you want more extensive info about it. But just to keep things short and simple, Miku and Izuki is easily in A tier purely because their 6 memory are pretty damn solid and their gameplay style are not that demanding. On the other hand, we have Ishika, Nino, and Yosuba in B tier. Each of them does have the problem that plague its own deck. Ishika has a very powerful 6 memory effect and easily one of the strongest among the 5, but unfortunately got holded back by everything else in her deck. And then we have Nino, which also have very solid support overall, but kind of holded back by her 6 memory effect, which only just give you a crit, and the fact that most of her unit attacks has to not be hit to activate the additional effects. And if you up against a proper player, they know how to control your game, and you don't really want your game to be controlled that way. And last but not least, Yosuba. I will have to say, among the 3 that's in B tier, Yosuba has the least problem, but the fact that she is a defensive deck kind of holded her back. In a meta where there's a lot of aggression, you have to be a little bit more better at defensive, and Yosuba kind of just slightly short on that step. Moving on to Dragon Empire specific supports from the DBT12, we have Jiva and Eugene coming in the form of Blanchard and Clifton. Yes, that's all they actually get. And to be fair, these 2 cards are not bad. Blanchard works well as a way to get additional benefit from Jiva's effect while still work as a booster, though it does cost you a Soul Blast, a resource that is not extremely cheap in Jiva. On the other hand, we have Clifton for Eugene, which is actually a very powerful unit. It works as a beater, booster, countercharger, and a card that can return triggers back from soul back to deck. The problem comes with the fact that why the heck this card still have to rely on Eugene retiring effects.
Emotional damage.
And the card also make the deck a lot more soul heavy, which is something you don't really want from Eugene when you're trying to return cards back to deck. So yeah, I would have to say the support is decent, but it doesn't shift the needle for the deck whatsoever. So with all that considered, Jiwa still stuck in the mid A and Eugene stuck in the low B until they get a proper support. At least, you know, one is confirmed to get a proper support in the next booster. Moving on to Bob Sabgra, and in my honest opinion, the support is actually very good, but I do feel that the support came a little bit too late for the meta.
Disappointed!
And that's why I will bump her up in the ranking into high A, but I'm not gonna put her into the A+ tier because there are other decks that are still better than her right now. So how good is the support? Well, the 2 new arm of hers can be played for free, can float back into the other arms, and it does have very powerful utility, especially for Twista the X, that allow you to give Bob Sabgra a guard restrict. And then we have Divistia, which is a very good powerful searcher that you do need in the deck for a while already, due to the fact that the deck tends to have a bad consistency fetching into Trick Moon. So this is a great card to essentially not only filter out the deck completely, but also help you to set up your drop zone if needed too.
Synergy.
And then last but not least, we have Velon. It does feel weird to have an overdressed outside Novada as a deck, but it's a very welcoming change due to the fact that the biggest problem with Bob Sabgra, in my opinion, is the fact that despite being a 3 attack deck, its 3 attack are not really thick enough to actually make an impact on the board. Now it can, as long as you can just get 2 overdressed Velot onto the field, that and maybe 1 Trick Moon in the last attack, this will easily makes every single attack for Bob hit for at least 50 to 80k. And for some people might say, oh, lower Vanguard power is not a good thing. To me, this is a better case due to the fact that Bob Sabgra can take advantage of the Twista a bit better this way as well. So yeah, overall it's an improvement, not enough to break the top 13. And then we have Gandiva, the deck that personally doesn't really need a support right now, but they decided to give it anyway, in the form of Brawadin, which also fixed the only loophole and weakness of the deck that it currently has, and that is the fact that the Vanguard effects is RNG focused. This literally just turned an RNG focus into a single board wipe, so it make it rewarding to check into this card. But overall, does the support really affect the deck at all? No. You can just play the same old Gandiva deck you have since DBT10 and you most likely will still top the format regardless.
Excellent.
So with all that considered, top S tier, no question asked. Moving on to Dusted support, and there is only 2 other decks that did get the support since this is a booster that introduced Gomina Crucio, and one of them are actually really good and the other one kind of shit, like really bad. So let's talk about the good one first, and that is of course Vitamin Bruce or Ribena Boost, Vietnamese Bruce, whatever you want to call him. And he got a support in the form of Gino and Derek, which are 2 very powerful cards, as one literally can recur himself and also enable 5th attack in Bruce deck, while Derek literally just give any unit that it boosted a guard restrict. And I do feel that this few aspect of it is actually very important, especially in Wyman's Bruce deck, because Wyman's kind of have the power in place already. Now it needs something that actually pressure the opponent better, and the guard restrict is really helpful, and of course the 5th attack. Though I will have to criticize this support in the sense that the recursion from Geno effect is a little bit iffy to pull off, and because of the timing as well, it is very awkward. And with all that considered, it definitely get a bump within its own tier, but I do not think that it is a deck that deserves to be in A+ tier or any higher, purely because the problem of Bruce with the hand size hasn't been properly solved. Then we have a Feroz for Baromagnes, and you know the video I made a while back, like 2 years ago, talking about how Baromagnes supports tends to be very mid or like barely tip the scale for the deck playability. This is exactly it, and I am mad, like I am extremely mad with this entry, purely because of the fact that Bushiroad literally has been shuffling Baromagnes under the table harder than Eugene. Like, yes, they did give a very good support for Baromagnes before, but that is at least 5 booster back by the time I recorded this video. Even Eugene did get a better support than Baromagnes, and with the heavy heart, I have to drop McMegane to B tier. And this is purely due to the fact that we are in the era where a lot of decks are just do the same thing that McMegane does, but without the heavy requirement that McMegane had. And not only that, the support for Dark State has been moving away from so stack focus a lot, and that actually affect the deck negatively. The deck is playable as it is. The only problem is that the support that it has been getting is just not good enough to cope with the current level of the meta that we have been facing. Now let's move on to Keter Sanctuary support, the nation that I feel did get the best support out of the 5, as every single deck that it gets support in this booster does see an improvement to their deck. And you know, even Solarian, the deck that everyone seems to forget about, and you know what, let's start with him. And Solarian did get few support in the form of Wisdom Claw Dragon and Dark Horse, and I'll have to say this right now, these two cards actually fix some of the deck issue, in a sense that not only the deck is capable of floating into 5th attack easily now, the deck is also drawing a lot, so essentially drawing into the key piece that the deck really needs, which actually help the deck to alleviate some of the issue a bit. But it does not fix the deck completely, and it does introduce another problem into the system as well, and that is the amount of counter blast you have to use. Fortunately for this particular problem, you can just run Derna and Storm, which does help you to counter charge for almost free actually. So I would have to say, as much as Solarian became a lot heavier to play, it is playing much more smoothly, though you still need some luck element to it, as the solution hasn't been completely fixed the issue. But I do feel that it is definitely deserved to graduate from the B tier into the low A tier, just purely because the deck feels a lot better to play, and this doesn't devalue the aggression that Solarian does have in the past as well. So with all that considered, definitely low A tier. Then we have Shoutout, and to me this is kind of like the dark horse in the A+ tier, and this is purely because of the fact that Shoutout received Delta Arcane Dragon, and the best way to describe Delta Arcane is, what if you're trying to put a Spiral QT Angel with the base aspect of original Shoutout effect and slap Sorceress restriction on it? That's Delta Arcane. Spiral QT is actually a very strong card when it is being called to Regard Circle due to its way of filtering, and not only that, the deck is capable of returning the trigger back to top of the deck, guaranteeing original Shoutout and Aquamarine effect will always go off. And not only that, you can use it more than one time per turn, which is ridiculous. Yes, you use a lot of counter blast for it, but the fact that you can guarantee 2 triggers within a single turn is actually insane, and in my honest opinion is exactly what Shoutout needs to keep her in A+ tier. The only reason I'm seeing that not a lot of people still playing the deck is purely because it is trigger reliant, and that is something that you can't really take away from Shoutout. But that is a little bit of a problem, because if you don't pull any triggers, the deck do jack shit as well. So it's a plus and minus with the playstyle, but this is the best that they can give it to Shoutout right now, and you know what, applaud to them for actually give Shoutout a good support this time as well. Then last but of course not least, Bastion. And we all know Bastion have a new form in the form of Accord, which I did make a whole video talking about it. But just to put it simply, this is S tier deck, and this is purely because of a point I did miss in that video, and that is the fact that in the more recent deck list with the people who has been topping, they actually use the original Red 3 order that does give Vanguard additional drive checks. This means that at the cost of this order and 1 discard from Bastion, you get up to 5 drive every single turn for a measly cost of 2 counter blasts. This is insane, especially with the fact that Bastion Accord is compatible with a lot of support that is generic in Keter, as well as the no nation support as well, and that is why the deck is in the S tier. Accord's flexibility literally removed the only weakness that Bastion used to have, and that's why it's finally gained its glory back after almost 10 booster of, you know, kind of like slowly but surely fading into obscurity. Bastion is finally back in the race. Move on to Bushiroad's favorite Shoutout, Vanguard. And for once I do feel Vanguard is eating quite a big fat out this time due to the fact that most of the supports are Masque related, which is not a bad thing for Masque player, but it is definitely a bad thing for those who focus on just Vanguard as a whole. But they do get one particular card that is specifically non-Masque, and that is of course Prison. Prison over the past few months did receive two very powerful units in the form of Security Upgrader and Rifle Warrior. Security Upgrader to me is essentially upgrading and fix the only problem that Pure Light has as a deck, and that is not being able to get into Pure Light at the timing that you want it to. This card essentially allows you to ride into Pure Light from anywhere as long as you have her somewhere in your deck, hand or drop zone. And not only that, it also works as a utility unit for Pure Light, as not only it reduces the cost of the Pure Light skill by 1 counterblast, but also the card actually helps to prison one more card from opponent drop zone, allowing you to hit 10 prisons very quickly. And I'll be honest, Security Upgrader wouldn't be half as good if not for Rifle Warrior as well. A Rifle Warrior essentially works as an early rush unit. All you need to do is just prison a card and it gets a 5k already. And not only that, its second ability works double as a way to filter a deck, and also extended into any cards in your deck that help you to either put card more into prison, or Security Upgrader helping you to accelerate into Pure Light without the need of essentially burning through your hand size, which is actually a really great thing. The only drawback is that if you do not draw Rifle Warrior by the first few turns, the deck does play like the original prison, which normally has a really bad turn 3. For that reason alone, and this is actually quite a huge thing, it's gonna be at the top of A tier. It just shy from going into A+ tier in my opinion, due to the aforementioned reason. Though I do feel that this is definitely one of those decks where you might be seeing it here and there as an anti-meta deck, so be careful, even Gandiwa users. Be careful about this deck. And then we have Masque unit in the form of Office Masque and Noiselinker Masque. Let's talk about the better one first, Office. And this is A+ tier for me immediately. This is purely because of the fact that the support synergizes so well with the deck set support, aka Polaris Dragon, in a sense that Office Masque seems to be tailored to allow Polaris Dragon to actually shine extremely well. And not only that, if you know how to play this deck properly, it is actually much more scarier than Regis, purely due to the fact that it actually can rush at a much faster pace than Regis, while Regis need you to build up world a lot before you can actually use it properly. And we move to, personally for me, the very first entry that I'm gonna downgrade it purely because of how bad the support is. Most of the support we have seen in Overdrive so far is either keep the deck at the status quo in a good way or actually improve the deck. This is a support that actually make the deck worse, and it's gonna drop into B tier. Noiselinker Masque is such a bad card. I already make a whole video talking about it before with all the new Masque unit in DBT12, so do check that out. But just to keep TLDR, Noiselinker Masque's biggest issue to me is the first effect. If the first effect would have been ability to put those meteor into the order zone instead of hand, that would actually help you to draw more and actually fix the only issue with its second skill. I'll say this first, Noiselinker Masque's second skill is not terrible, but the fact that you have to require so much hand size and the deck are vehemently going against it is really bad. The only reason why I don't drop even harder is purely because Vanguard still holds up after all this time, and this is a very recent experience with me fighting against a World Gravity player, which is really enlightening to see how much of a nuisance World Gravity was. Even after it's been I think at least half a year that the deck has been off the meta, the deck still somehow scares me, especially as someone who do play Dark States as a main nation. And that's why in the honor of World Gravity, I'm willing to only drop this deck by 1 tier. Otherwise it would have gone to, you know, D tier like easily for me. And then we have Stoic here, and in my honest opinion, the support is a little bit weird in a sense that there is a lot of winners here despite the price being very abysmal for them, but at the same time there are some support that in my opinion will become a huge pain in the ass for us to deal in the future. And overall it is a positive support for DBT12 Stoic here. Well, let's start off with some of the support that only get like 1 or 2 cards cards, aka Blackbird, Linon, and Grand Fear. Blackbird only get one additional support, and that is his Searcher. And to be honest, this is a little bit weird to give to him right now, especially the fact that there are no alternate form of Blackbird yet, but this might be a sign of what will be coming in DBT14. So for now, Blackbird will not get any position change because the support kind of helps the deck, but I do feel that we have to see a little bit more newer support to actually justify whether Blackbird is getting stronger or not. Then we have Linon and Grand Fear, in which in my opinion gets a pretty damn good support in the form of Rosarium Fairy, which technically is a support for every deck that do play plant token, aka these two. And to be honest, these are very useful cards. Like the fact that you can get a huge power boost from Rosarium for Grand Fear, and the card that can essentially generate 2 more regards for Linon actually helps the deck a lot, though I do feel that the support seems to gear toward the original Linon rather than the mask version of it. So with all that consideration, I would have to put it the same as the previous tier list. It doesn't really shift the needle for these two decks, as these two decks are more or less quite playable already, but it seems to be held back because of the fact that Plantok is starting to become more and more of a powerful unit, especially they decided to release that stupid order that makes plant token 15k instead of 5k for one turn. And because of that reason, I'm gonna push Claudia, which I put in the B tier last in the previous tier list, into A tier, mid A tier to be precise, purely due to the fact that the order will make a lot of change to the decks that do run plant token for a long run. And then we have our best friend furry Magnolia, and easily for me A+ tier. This is something I'm glad about this booster because every single new way of playing the certain deck in DBT12 technically boosts the power enough for it to be actually competitive, and Magnolia is one of them, purely because of the fact that, for one, the mask version of himself is actually one of the strongest I have seen compared to the other 8 mask units we have seen so far. And not only that, the deck did get Force Grow Dragon, which essentially works like a soul charge from Yu-Gi-Oh! If you guys get that reference, leave a like, man. But regardless, this deck literally has everything. Yes, you do put in a lot of counterblast to set it up, but the moment you set it up, it lasts for the whole game, in a sense that the deck can go aggressive even without Persona, right? And that is something that I feel a lot of people don't understand, because a lot of time you want the consistency, but sometimes all you need is just to make sure that everything has been built properly and you can just go ham with it, and this is one of those decks. The only drawback I have to say with Magnolia is it's such an offensive focused deck that is also its downfall, because if you cannot defend it well, the deck will die even before getting a chance to utilize those markers. But if you don't like those playstyle of Masque, you still have Elder, which did get a good number of support as well. To put it simply, Garena as an entry got weighted down by Masque, but I do feel for this entry, it is actually got lifted up by Masque, as Magnolia Masque now became the poster boy of a grade 3 build version of Magnolia, and I think for Magnolia players, it is a very welcoming change. Before we get into the other deck that did not get support in DBT12, I want to consider a few entries that did get its own support in the form of Dexet, Gramgrace, and Fafnir. There is only one entry I have to consider here because Gramgrace doesn't really get a huge boost, but Fafnir does, and he did get a promotion into A tier, mid A tier to be precise, and that is purely because of Horodis.
Play of the game. Till Valhalla.
Horodis, in my opinion, is such a powerful card for the deck because the deck need a Persona right, but couldn't do it because of the fact that Fafnir can only be run at one copy regardless of what you're trying to do with it. And because of that, for the longest time, Fafnir power has been held back because of that reason. Yes, we did get a card, but that's just one Persona right in like what, the deck size of 40 something plus. It's not worth looking forward to it. But now that the deck can Persona right as well as the normal deck can do, the deck changed the tone quite a bit, because now we have a deck that essentially gets a 33k with 2 crit Vanguard that can swing twice, which is actually quite scary. The only drawback with Fafnir that I'm not willing to push it any further is because of the fact that the deck is still resource heavy due to the fact that you have to set up 13 great inso with the skill first before you actually can take advantage of some of the strong unit, and even with that you do need more hand resource to actually use those effects, aka Elico for his effect to put a rearguard into soul. But regardless, I do have to say that a lot of dark state support is actually heavily compatible with this card, and because of that the deck did get a good number of boosts, and because of that he got a promotion. And then for Graham Grace, well, he did get something, a support that essentially turns most of his attack from 1 to 2 hand guard into 1 additional card to guard, and that's not the worst thing in the world. But I do feel that for Keter right now, there are much better deck to be considered in the format. Now let's move on to the rest of the entry in this tier list, starting off with our original fried chicken, Nirvana. And Nirvana, I have to give it low A right here. This is due to the fact that after all this time, the deck actually still holds up. The deck actually capable of pull off Ergo combo a lot more consistent now if you're going for the grade 3 version and the budget version. But I do feel that other than Excrudia, it is still a very solid deck that doesn't require a lot of resource to invest, and by that I mean money. And to be fair, it's still quite a fun deck to play. It has a lot of elements to make a meta deck, it's just that against Gandiva, this is nothing. Then we move on to Overlord, and Overlord has always been in A+ tier for the longest time from what I can remember, and I do have to say it has kind of fallen off. Like personally for me, it is sitting together with Prison in high A tier. This is due to the fact that yes, the deck can restand, yes, the deck can get into its best form very quickly, but the problem lies in the fact that if you do not pull a trigger at all, it is gonna make it hard for Overlord to actually win the game. And now that we have Omina Grisho that literally can shut down defensive, it kind of make Overlord uniqueness kind of dissipate away, especially after considering a lot of unit in Overlord deck gets some power but not high enough to actually fight against some of the more higher tier deck right now. So unfortunately for the deck, it has to drop out of A+ tier into high A tier. Then we move on to Tamayura, and you know what, in the honor of the deck actually beat me in the top 4 recently, I'm gonna give it high A because I do feel that I have been giving it less to little credits for what it can do, due to the fact that Will-O-Wisp Tamayura actually has ability to more or less give you a solution for every defensive way that you needed it to. The only drawback about Tamayura is that if you do not draw Broken Toy on the early part of the game, you are considerably hold back easily. So if you draw Broken Toy, the deck's broken. If you did not draw Broken Toy, the deck's not broken. I mean, it's in the name of the order. Then let's move on to Bruce, the Kool-Aid one. And the Kool-Aid boy right here is gonna stuck in B tier, mid B tier, below Yotsuba. Here is the thing about Bruce. Yes, he did get a grade 4 support version of himself that allow you to ride into Unravel very quickly, but the problem is that you do still need to wait until turn 4 for the final rush to be active, and as we all know by now, a lot of decks nowadays are very fast. Like if you cannot get your engine start by turn 3, you are kind of screwed. So Bruce can only get start on turn 4, accurate Bruce, and that's why it is definitely got holded back. Fortunately for him, he do have his Ribena version of himself to keep on the spirit of the deck. Then we have Greedon, and I put Greedon in the low A tier in the previous tier list, and I do feel that that's not a good representation of it.
Spicy.
And here's my thinking here. This will sound surprise to you guys, but I'm gonna put it in low A tier, man. This is low-key one of the strongest deck I have seen around, purely because of the fact that the deck can do a lot of guard restrict and also restand, something that Overlord seems to be missing. Yes, Overlord can do 4 drop check, Greedon can do 4 drop check and guard restrict on 4 of the attacks. You don't really have to put too much effort in the way you play the deck. As long as you play every step correctly, the deck is actually quite disgusting. Then we have Chaos, and Chaos is gonna be like low A for me, above Claudia, because of the deck capability to push really hard on turn 4, and the deck can do a decent job rushing opponent on turn 3 as well. So overall, Chaos is just one of those decks where as long as you can leave it to turn 4, you just go ham. And that is the reason why I cannot put it any higher as well, because the deck can only go ham on turn 4 and the deck cannot really defend before turn 4. So that is the issue. But until the deck did get additional support, I do think it is still a very solid deck. I mean, in fact, I just lose to it recently during my tournament purely because I got deck out from it. So yeah. Then we have Drajavel, and in my previous tier list, I put Drajavel in like medium, like close to medium of the A tier. I feel that I'm being too kind. You can hang out with Barrow. well. Here's the reason why I'm judging Dragiro really hard right now. Right now, the problem with Dragiro is easily the amount of cost it has to put into. Yes, you did get an abilities which actually help to counter charge, but I do feel that that cat also is a little bit too situational for the deck as well. So the fact that the deck still demands so much, and I feel the payoff is not as good as it is now that we have things like Open Crucio. I do feel that the deck deserves a bit more harsher scrutiny, and it really needs something to really prop the deck up. And I'm saying this with consideration of Empusa as well. Then we have PBO, and PBO is low-key one of the very fun deck to play, but I can see that it has been slowly and surely being overlooked by its other counterpart, purely due to the fact that it requires more resource compared to its counterpart. And if your opponent can do something to blast the dark, your deck kind of come to a halt compared to the other deck that can essentially put away your key piece as well. So I will have to drop this deck playability a bit, but I will still leave him in A tier. I'll put it like here lah. He's still better than Chaos in terms of consistency, so I'll leave it him there. And what I'm willing to put a bit higher is definitely MLB, like just right above this one, purely because yes, the deck still need key piece, but now with Emmeline being easily available, you can easily get a really huge attack that really hard to break to while still having 4 attacks and, you know, pressure with Vanguard and also triple drive. So overall, MLB edge better than PBO to an extent after considering PR, and now that the meta has kind of shifted towards retire based kind of meta, PBO definitely edge poorer than MLB, at least in my opinion. Then we have Tegria, well, still one of the strong deck in the top, so I will just put beside Tamayura, maybe above Bob actually. I mean double persona, what can I ask for? The deck flow extremely well, with the only drawback being, you know, you can have your hand full of grade 3 as well. Because of the way the deck works, you are running a very wonky ratio, very close to Bastion in fact. So yeah, definitely very strong deck, but if your draw is really bad, it will screw your deck over as well. Then we have Duisberg, and this is pre-DBT13 before he get a new support, so I'm just gonna bring Duisberg down to A tier as well. This is due to the fact that Duisberg just doesn't have enough power even though he has a lot of filter. So essentially it just boils down to the fact that the power level just going higher. His over filtering is start to get affected already because he doesn't get enough power to actually fight against some of the stronger deck in the higher tier as well. Then we have Eva, and you guys gonna be surprised by this, but Eva definitely dropped into A+ tier. Yes, finally Eva is no longer an S tier deck. And here's my thinking about it. Eva focus has always been an all-rounder that has a strong survivability, and I think right now her survivability has been outclassed by the rush of the Willista, offensiveness of Gandiva, and also ridiculous number of drive check from Bastion. And purely all because of that, Eva has been dethroned. Not completely, she's still one of the most safe deck for you to invest though, because she has been lasting for so long. The deck's still playable, and if you up against Eva, don't underestimate it. That's the best way I can say about it. Then we have Hero, and I feel like Hero is like a Eugene of Brangate
Emotional damage
right now, and he seems to be not in a good place right now. Yeah, like he doesn't have a good rush. Like his rush skill needs a counter blast, even though the deck already used a lot of counter blast, and there's no proper counter charger to use for the deck cause you rather run B hero than running Boba Mine. So unfortunately for this deck, it's getting a demotion to C rank, and I'm still putting it in high C because the deck is still playable. It's just that like a lot of pieces is missing from the deck right now, and Bushiroad is not giving a fuck on supporting it. Then we have Soga. I'll put Soga as one of the top deck lah. It is still an extremely powerful deck, but I will put it behind Magnolia. This is because of the fact that Soga is a deck that extremely reliant on the order, which does play into its Masque version well. But the problem is that if you do not pull any Shadow Cloak at all, the deck can kind of screw you over a lot. And not only that, as much as the deck can counter strike deck very well, it's still one of the deck that can brick very easily. So that's something I feel I'm not really happy with. I mean, at least based on my testing, I know some great Soga player out there as well. So if I put the Soga too low, do put in a comment. Then we have Rorowa, and Rorowa, I'm gonna put him just below Tamayura. This is due to the fact that the deck is a very strong glass cannon. This is the best glass cannon I have seen, but unfortunately he has been outclassed by Bastion because of the fact that Bastion can drive 5 times instead of, you know, 2 times. Then moving on to Kairi, and this is pre-promo Kairi, which I think it just got released recently based on the day I recorded this. And I'll have to say Kyrie is still a very solid deck. Like, it definitely outclass a lot of decks, but the fact that Ganiwa exists and the power level that it gains is not as high now, it definitely shows its edge. And for that consideration, I'm just gonna put it in like right in the middle of A tier, like current A tier. Next up we have Ronero. To be fair, I feel I just Ronero a little bit too high in my previous tier list, so I'm just gonna drop her down just a little bit to be below Overlord actually. Like, the guard restrict is still good, the deck still can draw a lot, and the only bottleneck the deck has ability to search for song has been solved already, so I think the deck is still good. The only drawback of the deck is just that it is a turn 4 deck, but at least it has a turn 3 play. Then move on to Clarissa, low A tier. I'll put her above Solarian because Solarian is still RNG focused. Clarissa is very consistent as long as the attack hits. So yeah, I'll leave it there. Then we move to Alestial. I love Alestial, man. I really love it, but I feel that the direction has been really poor for Alestial, and at the current stage where the power has going higher and higher at a much faster pace, Alestial needs something better. I'm dropping her into high C tier. Yes, I'm dropping her harder, and this pained me a lot because I love Alestial with her wacky mechanic, but right now her wacky mechanic hasn't been solved properly yet. They have been releasing support to play around it, but not addressing the issue properly yet. Then we have Relista, and yeah, easy number 2. I mean, Elvira is a ridiculous card to play now because it can easily give the deck +2 to 4 depending on how many you have on the field, and the deck has consistent final attacks and also very good rush and a respectable high power level. Like, it's not as high as Gandiva, but it is respectable enough to actually rush the opponent as well due to the fact that the deck can do early rush as well. And let's be real, Relista right deck engine is very universal for Lyrical. If you have problem with soul or hand size, just run Relista engine. It will fix your deck issue quite well, as long as you're willing to sacrifice at least one slot in your main deck. So yeah, Herminia, high C. As I mentioned before, the mechanic is very clunky, but the deck is playable, just needs something that can take advantage of that clunkiness of the mechanic better. For tier, low B. This is pre LBTO4, so the deck still have clunkiness in terms of ability to just populate the field consistently or take advantage of the rush well enough. Fortunately for her, she's getting better. So looking forward to LBTO4 tier list, which most likely coming in like a month or 2. Let's see how it goes. Then we have Felty Rosa, sorry. Felty Rosa, to me, I'm gonna leave her where she was, which was in like high A. I'm gonna put her like just below Itsuki because these 3 deck does have similar issue. It needs a specific mechanic to pull off, and once it pull off very well. But if you compare like these 3 decks together, I do say Felty Rosa is the weakest among the 3 right now. So yeah. Next up, Lutetia, also dropped into A tier, high A tier. I might push her back into A+ tier if like there's an extra slot left, but I am not sure whether there is any extra slot left for the deck later on or not. But overall, similar issue with Overlord. It's a restanding deck that I feel the power gaining is just not as high, though it still have a strong rare card to push. So that's why I'm still willing to put it above User and Overlord itself. So yeah. Next up, Liufa. Get help. The deck needs help right now, and so does Kyoka and Medio. Like, these few decks seems to be forgotten by Bushiroad, you know. Like, I thought the NPC deck is forgotten hard in the main nation already. They forgot the Lyrical Nation even harder, unfortunately. And for Michu also, like, despite being a glitter deck, what happened to this girl? Where is the alternate form Dokuno? Where's the alternate form Michu? I'm waiting for that, man. But until then, just above Nirvana, because the deck is still very fun to play. And Hariset was in high B, so I'm just gonna leave her in high B. But since there's a new entry deck push in, I'll put it like here lah, because you know there's more B entry this time around. Then we have Vilista. And this is hard to judge because I do consider Velstra being one of the very good deck around, but unfortunately he did also fall off the tier a bit. This is due to the fact that he didn't get any support at all, and a lot of the new support doesn't really support him that well due to the fact that he just play very differently from the rest, and you can use habitable effect to search for maximum and then place it directly. Though the decks still have a really good rush, but until DBT13 support, I think Velstra is still a bit iffy in that department. Then we have Arcade, and this is one of the biggest disappointment I have in a while. I'm gonna drop Arcade to high B. I know I'm dropping it hard, but here's the reason why. Arcade is just a little bit short of being good in a sense that like they haven't been releasing a strong monster specifically for Archive and play into Archive well until like the PR, and even the PR is still very iffy to play. So essentially it's just very high demand deck right now. Even though it does have a very good high power level, I do feel the deck is missing a pieces that actually make the deck better. Also, can I complain something? Why the hell they have to give a monster searcher a non-monster name? That's just ridiculously dumb. I'll just end my complaint right here. Then we have Eredogramma, and Eredogramma doesn't really have any like proper dedicated support right now, so I'll go and leave it like in high C tier as well. Like, you know, just like most of the
No ride line boss.
a lot of them has been forgotten, unfortunately. Then we have Shoutout, and oh boy, this is a deck that I feel I have been misjudging it ever since it got a huge support in DBT11, and after playing it, even not considering the PR, it is easily high A tier. I'm willing to put this together. This is due to the fact that the deck has some of the strongest early rush you can get, and not only that, now that they get the DBT11 support, the recycle capability of it and the ability to search for more cards, it's just very insane for the deck. And not only that, these support are all stealth unit, and there is more stealth unit coming in the future that actually makes this deck even stronger as well. So technically, Shoujo start off slower than Archive, but eventually he get a much better quality support compared to Archive, and that's why I have to put him in a much higher position compared to last time. I think last time I put it like mid B, so this is a huge improvement for this deck. Then we have Luquia. Okay, to be fair, there is a few fun way you can play around Luquia with the new support, but overall the deck is still a little bit clunky to play and can be bricky thanks to the way the PR works with the deck. And because of that, I'm gonna drop her just a little bit, just like Archive, into high B tier. The deck is good, like it has a power that can fight against the deck of like Gandiva, Caliber and everything, but I do feel that there is something missing from the deck. I can't really figure out why as well, but there's something feels missing from this deck, and right now it just kind of being like a meh version of like Omina Crucio, like, you know, 4 attacks and everything. Then we have Baphomides. Baphomides is, I'm gonna leave him where he was, which is high B, so I'm gonna leave him like here. I mean, he's generic deck, and he can take advantage of a lot of great support well for that stat, so plus for him. Then Transrotor, just stay at a D, man. Just be the actual name of it, Transrotor. The deck is just a meme. Then we have Minerva, and this will surprise you guys, and this is one thing that I feel I regret never put into the tier list, in my previous tier list. Minerva is high A tier for me. Minerva was actually one of the strongest deck in like late DBT11 meta, and this is due to the fact that the grade 1 support that she get back in DBT11 actually do much more job than I was expected, and because of that I had to give it a prop. And yes, it beat Eva because of the fact that the deck now can gain more hand size better while still more or less, you know, swing for 4 times with the Vanguard. And also the new OT actually make her deck better now because you don't have to play the god awful Armatinua with Minerva, which is a really bad combo together. Then we have Petaka, and Petaka did get a support, and I feel like, yeah, it's kind of playable. Not sure it's enough or not. I will put in high C for now. Like, I'm willing to promote her because of the fact that the new support is actually useful, but I feel you need a few more cards to make the deck works. Kind of like how Graham Grace and Fafnir need a few more support to actually make a deck work properly. Then we have Maelstrom, and Maelstrom unfortunately also fall off a bit for me. Yes, the deck can maintain the high push well, but I do feel that like the power level just going up, and I think the PR is just not doing it for me. Then we have Chronojet Dragon. This is tough because Chronojet MSI hasn't been clearly seen in the format a lot in the recent tournaments, but I do still think it is one of the strongest deck around, as much as I hate the deck so much. I'm willing to put it in A+ tier. How high is it though? I think I'll just put in front of Soga like this lah. Then we have Vanguard. This is pre-DBT13, so I will still put him in the top of B tier because the deck still have a good pressure, but I think it needs DBT13 support to actually shift it to the next level. So until then, high B tier for Vanguard. Then for Megalonosuji, he fall off the meta, I feel, like from the top A+ tier, but he's roughly in the same power level as Pure Light, I feel. Megalonosuji is still stronger than Shoujoruji because Megalonosuji can use everything that Shoujoruji can use. and the deck has a much better rush than Shoutout, but I think Vanguard kind of screw his deck playstyle just a little bit. In the past, he was able to rush the Vanguard to hell, but I think right now, maybe not so much now that Vanguard can also do a bit of early rush as well. Then Unica C tier. Yes, Unica did get a new deck, a new support, but I do feel that they forget about her. I hope that they're giving proper support in DBT13 for Unica, because damn, I love the deck, but boy, the deck is really bad right now. Then we have Grifokinla. I'll leave it in the high B tier as well, because you know, put all the build blah 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 together, average it out, is roughly B. It's a gimmick deck, and it's a gimmick deck that requires you to store, so it is hard to use. Not as hard to use as I would say it is actually harder to use than Yosuba. In fact, this is purely due to the fact that Yosuba, as long as the attack hit, it works. Grifogela has to last for 7 turns without anything, so you know, the deck building might be a bit. Actually, if now that I say that myself, I think I'll just bring it down to low B tier. You know, the deck is still bad unless there is a stronger support for the deck right now. Though I think the deck I think every single build of Grifogela is getting better, because there are support that more or less help to support the best way to build Grifogela in each of the nation as well. So yeah, Messiah last entry in the A+ tier for me. This is due to the fact that it's a strike deck. The deck is still strong. The only drawback with the deck is just that it just got screwed over by Carnival really hard, and there's not much representation. I can't really say how good Messiah actually is, but I do still think that it is still one of the strongest deck around. The only drawback is that it's a vanilla deck until you strike, but at least it can live through itself until you strike into at least one of the Messiah form that we have. Then we have Silhouette, and Silhouette is a fun DP deck, yada yada. I think right now it's playable. It's still playable. It's solid enough to be in A tier. I feel like the playstyle is just right for me. Then we have Vermilion, and initially I thought the Vermilion is gonna be broken because of the fact that it counters a lot of decks that rely on rare cards, but unfortunately a lot of deck that is in the top tier right now doesn't heavily rely on the rare cards. Maybe McMegane gets screwed over by Vermilion, so it's kind of like a niche option, anti-meta option, just like Prison. So with that considered, I think I put in the A tier last time, so I'm just gonna leave him where he was. Then of course we have ESO. This is pre-PR based ESO, so the support haven't come yet. I do feel that like ESO is in the mid A tier. As long as you're not up against Masque deck, this deck is capable of run over against any deck that takes until turn 3 onwards to actually shine. ESO can literally beat them down, and I feel that this is one of those decks that definitely being underestimated or not being heavily used by a lot of people, purely because of the fact that there are quite a number of Masque deck in the format right now. I mean, heck, there is like what, 1, 2, 3, 4 Masque deck in the top 13 right now. So I'm not saying ESO will shine until Masque is completely out of the meta. So yeah, no, sorry, there's 5 Masque deck in the tier list right now at the high tier list. Then we have Rudusuru and Omistiak. I think that they need support right now. Like back to the problem of power. The decks definitely lack power right now. And last but not least, Mushiking. Well, I completely forgot about this deck and how it is actually meta because of the restand and power gain, easily power gain. So you know what? I'm gonna put I'll bring Gridon down to like this tier, and Mushiking can go to be one of the top 13. Yep, Mushiking easily very busted deck if you can drive into the drive check well. The difference between Mushiking and Overlord is that the filtering for Mushiking is just simply way better than Overlord's, even though Overlord has an advantage in terms of a better drive and the support that play around it. So unfortunately for Overlord, there are just way too many restand decks that just do a much better job than him right now. And this is the end of my tier list. So what do you guys think of this tier list? Do leave down in the comments below, as you know, nobody's perfect and everyone is entitled to our own opinions. Once again, I am not a proper competitive player, so I might not making certain judgment right. So do mention down in the comments below and you know, be civil about it. And yeah, that's all I have for today guys. Take care of yourself, and this is McMegane signing out.